I'm Crystal Abraham. I'm a biologist currently doing research in human genomics. Today, we're dealing with the COVID-19 frequently asked question 5. What is the correlation between a SARS-CoV-2 infection and A, genetics, and B, asthma and milder symptoms? So I want to take a moment today to talk to you about how our genetic makeup can impact the way a SARS-CoV-2 infection affects us. You may have heard of the term DNA before. What is DNA? You can think of DNA as like a blueprint for our bodies. It provides instructions for how our body should function on the inside as well as look on the outside. Our DNA makes up what is known as genes, and genes are responsible for different characteristics about us. For example, our hair color or our eye color. We have variations in our genes known as alleles. This is the reason that we do not all look alike. So for example, there may be an allele for blue eye color and there may be an allele for brown eye color for a gene. Similarly, in our immune system, there are genes known as human leukocyte antigen genes, or HLA genes. These genes are important because they make proteins that tag or identify viral proteins so that our immune system can see it and know to destroy it. You can think of this as like an alarm system for your home that alerts you to when there are intruders. Some people have different alleles or variations in these HLA genes that may make them more vulnerable by A, either not identifying as much viral proteins or not identifying a more dangerous part of the virus. I will explain this. For example, let's say that person A has a variation that allows them to identify 12 viral proteins, and person B has a variation that allows them to identify 3 viral proteins. Then person A will be less vulnerable than person B. Similarly, for example, let's say that person A has a variation that allows them to identify a part of the virus that would elicit a stronger immune response than person B. That makes person A less vulnerable. You may have also heard of the ACE2 receptor. This is a receptor that is responsible for allowing SARS-CoV-2 to enter into our cells and infect us. Some people have ACE2 variants that put them at greater risk of being infected because there might be increased binding between the receptor and the spike protein of the virus. So, there is also an ACE1 gene. There is a variant of this ACE1 gene known as the D allele that is linked to reduced expression of ACE2. Reduced expression of ACE2 means that there are fewer receptors for SARS-CoV-2 to bind to. For SARS-CoV-1, scientists implicated a gene known as TCAM2, which plays a role in active immune response. Since there's a 79% similarity between SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2, scientists suggest that variations in this TCAM2 gene may play a role in the way that we respond to a SARS-CoV-2 infection. Recent studies suggest that there is a gene variant implicated with Alzheimer's disease known as APOE4 linked to COVID-19. Having 2 copies of this gene may make you more likely to develop a severe form of a SARS-CoV-2 infection. Recently, a genome-wide association study was done on clinical samples from Italy and Spain. These patients were infected with SARS-CoV-2. Their samples produced data that suggested that there are variations in 2 regions that may be linked to respiratory failure during infection. 2 regions identified from this study was the ABO blood group and a multi-gene cluster on chromosome 3. It was found that blood type A was linked to increased respiratory failure, whereas blood type O seemed to be protective. This means that they found more patients with blood type A being infected with COVID-19 as opposed to blood type O. On chromosome 3, 3 different genes were identified. One of these genes interacts with ACE2 and the other 2 are chemokine receptors. The chemokine receptors aid T-cell differentiation and recruitment during some viral infections such as influenza. It should be noted that further studies need to be done on the genes I have mentioned in order to solidify this data. Some of these studies are based on in silico analysis or they are based on European populations. This data therefore more than likely does not represent what we might find here in the Caribbean. These genetic susceptibility studies are important because, for example, in a pandemic setting, it can be paired with testing so that we can prioritize vaccination. They are also important because if we're able to identify certain genes, we can repurpose already circulating medication that already targets those genes. So based on the information I've said, just to summarize, we've seen that some gene variations make you more susceptible to a SARS-CoV-2 infection. So as of June 28th, this information is accurate, but more research needs to be done, like I said. Thank you for listening.